Had a very good day yesterday. Had a bit of luck because I'd taken a couple of days holiday, and yesterday morning the roads were all treacherously icy, and so schools were cancelled, and so Kerry had the day off. So the right result, Kerry and I had a day of boat building, and if you scan around Hazel, you can see what we've achieved. We've got the next two stations stood up here, station 5 and 4. So we cut the notches and stood these in place. We've glued in the first piece of chine log and the shear clamp each side. They're actually glued into place. Glue's dry now because it also later in the day it was quite warm. We've scuffed the first piece of the shear clamp here, and that's running aft, so it's glued in there. So these two sections are now nowhere near as wobbly as they used to be. Yeah, so what we're going to do today, Hazel's home, so we're going to get the next section stood up, and then we're going to fit in some more longitudinal members, some more pieces of shear clamp and chine log. Well, we've got on quite well this week. We're back to snow today, but we've got a fair bit done. A few spin around Hazel. We can see, I'm just going to squeeze past you. We can see that we've got all of the cabin up now. So this is station 3, 4, 5, and as before, 6, 7, 8, 9 up, 10 and 11. If you want to scan around there, I'll let you have a look at that. That's as far as we are. Now then, let me come around there. Good. Then going on, shear clamp is coming on. On this side, well, I've got 3 pieces scuffed together on this side of the shear clamp. And the chine log at the top, only the one so far, but it's coming on. Obviously, it's quite an effort. You have to be very careful that these are levelled out. So where we drew the centre lines and the water lines on, the centre lines centre it, obviously. The water lines are important to get level. And you've got various options. You could draw a line through there. You could use one of those laser thingies. I've got this 3 metre level. I'll just come through here, which is quite good for, we just set it up on the water lines like there and there, for example, and it's bang on the bubble, which is very, very nice. So quite pleased with all of that. But the levelling up is it's got to be right. Then let me come back to that down here. Take the shear clamp, for example. Some of my notches were quite well cut. Some of them not quite so very well, so a bit gappy. So in the end I glued it in with epoxy. I did try with the Semper Rock, but I wasn't happy, so I glued them in with epoxy, which I felt had a better gap filling properties. But we've got it nicely now. Looks good. This is obviously the first layer, so we've got another layer coming over, which will be set with the joints in the middle, so it supports it all. Yeah, that's in there nicely. I've also cut the floor beams. In some places there are floor beams that come not on the station. So I've got 2 stood there. I've cut which come in here and here. Once I've got the chine log up, I can lay those in. And I've cut the 2 for here, at least roughly, cut to thickness. Clearly I've got to cut them to length and set them in there. The 2 go in here. So they're in place, or laid roughly in place and ready for a final cut. Get them in. And those floor beams will give us make sure we've got the curve at the top absolutely right. So they need to be cut accurately. Yeah, that's where we are. If we go inside, if you wander inside, Hose.
I'll try.
Let's just walk round. You can show the boat as you walk round. I'll just go past you. It's starting to look quite big in here. Do you want to come in? Good. Yeah, watch your feet because there's bits of wood everywhere. Starting to look quite big, so we're in the saloon here. There'll be settees both sides, obviously. Good size, long enough to lay down on. There's a sea berth, which is important. And through here, obviously this bit last time, didn't we, with the galley and the head area. Down here is where the main mast is going to come. So that's obviously an issue when I rig the boat, but I will be starting off in inland waterways. I intend to start off in inland waterways, so the boat won't be rigged to start with, which will give us a lovely walk through there. Later on when it's rigged, main mast is coming in here. But that, I can see here, for example, there's plenty of room to walk through there, so I'm happy with that. Obviously the mast is in the middle of the cabin in a 32-foot boat, so you're a bit restricted lengthwise, but widthwise. It's going to take some space, but that can't be changed with a schooner rig. Other than that, looking good, I think. Quite happy with this hatch that goes through to the fore cabin, because that's nice and easy to get through, even for an old fellow like me. Bit cold today for gluing, so we won't be doing any gluing, I think. Mind you, the forecast for next week is looking good. Sunday, I think they're forecasting 14 degrees at the moment, and next week's supposed to be 10 or so all week. So hopefully we get a chance to get some gluing done and get on. At the moment, the temperatures are restricting our gluing progress. That's the biggest frustration. But I try to do sawing and cutting of wood, preparing wood when it's too cold. And that's going fairly well, we're getting on fine. Well, the boat's getting bigger, as I keep saying. We're up as far as the station 1 here. Yeah, obviously the 0 is still to come in here, and then the stem. Good, but that's set up. We've scarfed various pieces of the chine log and shear clamp together. If you come around this way, Hazel, we'll walk around this side. These, at the moment, these are just fixed roughly in place with a couple of clamps and whatever. From here on, the shear clamp is glued, but the chine log isn't. The chine log is glued from here, I think. It is from here. Aft, and we've now got both the shear clamp and the chine log glued in position all the way back to the station 11. So that's good, both sides, and it's not easy. Maybe better to glue the pieces for the chine log and the shear clamp together, outside, glue up a 10-metre length, scarfed up, and then bring them in one length. But the weather wasn't conducive to that. We couldn't work outside, and haven't got a shed big enough to glue it up in one piece. So we've glued them up in situ on the boat. It's come out okay. But you have to be very careful to get them straight. But they're in place. As I've said before, the notches are quite tricky. Now and again it needs a little adjustment to the notch when you eye up the pieces running around there. But that's come out okay. The boat's nearly to its final size. As I say, it's just the 0 to go in that end. We've just been starting to work on the stern post. So that's the last step up there. Perhaps we'll just cut there and we'll wander around to the stern post and have a look at that area. Good, so we've cut this notch here where the stern post fits into. That wasn't too bad to cut. We've done a sort of trial run with it all. It comes up roughly, I'll show you approximately how it comes. Approximately like that. That's not far out. So that's the back of the boat. The notch needs to be about 1 centimetre deeper, so it's not quite finished, but that's approximately where she comes. Then these pieces obviously need to bend into there. So that's we've started on it, at least. First thoughts on the stern post. Interesting times. Good. Temperature's a lot better. Maybe it's spring. The forecast is for 10 degrees or so for a bit. We've used epoxy today. Got the little heater running, but just take it up a degree or two, but it's good. Epoxying temperatures, so that's all comfortable. Yeah, I was going to say something about the scarf jointing. If you look here, Hazel, got this scarf, which I've showed you already, is an 8-to-1 scarf, so that thickness times 8 up there for the length. And I was intending to talk about that a bit today. It was rather interesting because I think in the week, late in the week, I watched I think it's the latest video from Tips from a Shipwright, Lou. Marvellous set of videos. If you don't know them, I recommend them highly. And there's Lou, he's building a small dory, but he's making scarf joints. Very, very similar. And it was good to watch him do them and see that he does it almost exactly the same as me, because I think he knows what he's talking about. So that was nice to see. There's one thing that we do slightly different, and there's something I learnt the hard way on this one. When Lou cuts his scarf joints, he's using an electric planer to plane the angle on there, and then finishing them off with a hand block plane. And what I do is I mark them out and I cut them on the table saw. And you cut them, you can never get it perfectly on the table saw, but you get it roughly right. Make sure you leave a bit of extra meat on there, don't cut too much off. And then I finish them off with almost exactly the same block plane that Lou uses, amazingly. And the thing that I learnt the hard way, perhaps we should go into the shed next door and I'll talk about that. So cut here, we'll wander next door and I'll tell you about that. Yeah, so here we are in the other shed. And I've got this piece of wood here that I'll use as a demo. This is one that I didn't use. There's too much heartwood in it. I didn't like it at all. Look at the shape of it. But anyhow, serve our purposes here. So we're cutting these scarf joints. As I said, marking out a 8-to-1 scarf. So I'm just measuring that out, squaring across there. Then I'm marking myself a line. Oh, it's falling over for me. There we go. Marking myself a line, something like that. Okay. And that is the piece that we're trying to cut off, that wedge-shaped piece there. Okay, let's get these out of the way. Hazel, you'll have to swap round that side. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, is the light still all right?
Yep.
No, I'm coming back in, don't worry. So, I'm not going to cut this, but imagine. So, I get the saw running. In order to cut this depth of cut, I have to have the dust extractor off, which you've seen before. So we'll quickly take that off. Last time I did it, I had trouble with that nut, didn't I? Normally it goes on there first time, and whenever the camera's running, it doesn't want to go on. Look, stupid thing. There we go. Right. Saw's running, and then I'm eyeing that up there and trying to run that through there at that angle to cut that wedge off. It works fine, no problem at all. I say to get it 100% accurate is tricky because you're always a little bit less than perfectly upright, but it works fine. So I take it off and I finish it with a block plane. So I had this brainwave, which was a very stupid one, because I had several of these to cut. What I did was I clamped 3 pieces together, staggered them so that they were always in line with the squared off line. I drew my angular line there, lovely. Put it in there, started to cut. Now here's the thing, when you're cutting one singular one, you cut it off, and the wedge, whatever it looks like,
The wedge gets cut off, it'll be that way around, gets cut off there, and when it's cut off, it gradually works its way back out there, and you can grab it and throw it in the bin, no trouble. But when you're cutting several of them, what happens, I learnt the hard way, is that one comes through there like that, no trouble. Then the next one pushes that further through. The back of the saw picks that up, because it's rotating this way, and fires it at your face at quite a high speed. I don't know if it's still there, but there's a lovely little, it actually drew blood, you know, and not a good idea at all. So for the rest of the day, I made sure I was standing to one side as I cut them, so that if any flew out that way, they'd miss me. But then it dawned on me that the problem was clamping them together. Stupidity. As long as that piece of cut off piece doesn't get beyond the centre, it comes back out nicely. But if you push it beyond the centre, it's projected out at high speed and frankly bloody dangerous. It's time for a Tony's tooltip. And this one, because we're talking about the scarf joints, there's an obvious tool to talk about. As I said, I cut them on the table saw, and after that I'm finishing them off with this delightful little Stanley block plane. As I say, and Lou, from Tips from a Shipwright, was using exactly the same block plane, as far as I could tell at least. His was a bit older. I bought this one this year, or last year I bought this one. Anyhow, Stanley block plane, fits beautifully in the hand, not very expensive, 40, 45 euro, something like that. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and for finishing off those scarf joints, absolutely perfect, you know, I'm absolutely perfect. Interesting that Lou, when he was playing them that way, with the argument that the grain drives the blade deeper in. I think there's a difference. He was working with white oak, I'm working with Doug fir. I think if you tried to plane that way with Doug fir, you'd have a disaster on your hands. But this way, there we go, little demo. Cuts beautifully, and it's a perfect tool for just finishing off those scarf joints. You've got all sorts of adjustments on these. Of course, the most important one is your blade depth, which is so easy to adjust. They are lovely, aren't they? Adjust your blade depth on that screw, and you can get really fine blade depth adjustment on it. Marvellous tool. This one here adjusts the angle of the blade, so you probably can't see that, but it makes the blade do that, so you can set it less than square if that's what you want. And this one here adjusts the opening. Can you see that? Can you see that, Hazel?
Yeah.
That adjusts the opening there. So, highly adjustable tool. Beautiful and sharp. Obviously you have to sharpen it to keep it sharp, but they are brilliant. These little Stanley planes are fantastic, and in my experience, any plane from Stanley is pretty darn good. You can pick these up second hand on eBay if you're lucky. Look at it, it's not very big, it's a lovely little hand plane. I use it a lot, really. It is a fantastic tool. And if I was going to recommend, the tools that I've shown you so far, this is the one I'd probably recommend the most. These are fantastic. So, whatever you do, buy one. And Stanley aren't paying me. Cut.
Riches in the sunset, standing at the sea. Tell me where you're going so decisively. What's your destination? Tell me where you're bound. We can move together where adventures abound. Running free before the breeze. Are days such as these.
Fuck it.